everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and you know what time of the week it is. That's right, it's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday, my favourite time of the week, because it's time to look at my wrestlers of the week. There's been a lot of exciting action this week. We've had the second instalment of the Wednesday Night Wars with AEW and NXT doing battle once again and for the foreseeable future. We've also had some exciting matches elsewhere too, so it's not just going to be NXT and AEW centric. It's going to be a bit of a mixed bag this week. I really like the makeup of this week's list. It's a bit of a sprinkling from everywhere. Ooh, delightful. But first of all, of course, we must take a look at the honourable mentions. First off, I think I should shout out the Young Bucks for having a wonderful, selfless tag team match on AEW Dynamite. Also Darby Allin, who was kind of the star of this week's show in a way. He became #1 contender, defeating Jimmy Havoc, and then skateboarded down the ramp, and then, leapt off and nailed Jericho with a clothesline, which was straight out of an emo kid's wet dream. We also had Shun Skywalker and Masato Yoshino, who had a great 5-minute sprint of a match over in Dragon Gate, and also Drew Gulak, who again was another one of those selfless performers this week, who may not have won, but won our hearts in a way on NXT. And I think also a final shout out to women's wrestling veteran Lufisto. Obviously Matthew's been in Germany over the past weekend for the big spectacular tag team extravaganza over in WXW, and there was a women's tour. Not all of the shows have gone out yet, but the first night of the tag tournament has gone out, and also one of those sort of side events alongside all of the main action, which was a women's tournament, which was won by Lufisto. One of the matches was really short, but the main event especially was really impressive, so it was nice to see Lufisto back, I guess, as a feature of the wrestling landscape, or at least to the wider I don't know what she's been up to recently, but it was nice to see her back. Now on to my top 10, and number 10 this week. Well, I don't often just give points for promo work, but I've done it very occasionally. I think the Ciampa once picked up a point or two just for an excellent promo on NXT. This week is no different. Yes, the person I'm about to mention had a match in the main event of AEW Dynamite, but the match itself was quite good. It wasn't anything spectacular, certainly not one of the best matches of the week or anything. But the promo that he did earlier in the show was one of the best promos of the year. It was absolutely incredible. The man I'm talking about is, of course, the AEW World Champion, Chris Jericho, who just bags a point this week by being one of the best promos and one of the biggest stars in the wrestling game today. This promo achieved so many things, man. One, it introduced every member of the group, for those unfamiliar with them perhaps. It gave everyone a bit of a role. Sammy Guevara's the young up-and-comer. Santana and Ortiz are like the vicious, unrelenting tag team. Jake Hager's the muscle, and of course Chris Jericho's the main man himself. And he just delivered it so well. It was partly off the cuff too. It just seemed so natural and so heelish. It was easy to boo him. But also he then shut down the hatred for Jack Swagger, or at least the mocking of Jack Swagger, and reaffirming the fact that this isn't Jack Swagger, this is Jake Hager here in AEW Dynamite. The whole We the People thing was stupid. He took a little shot at WWE. The crowd loved it and hated it in equal measure, but in the right sort of way as well. It was such a difficult combination to nail, and he just nailed it totally, both getting the crowd up for a big show and also getting them to hate him too, and that's just such a rare skill. Jericho also came up victorious in the main event, teaming with Sammy Guevara to defeat the team of Hangman Page and Dustin Rhodes. But honestly, this was just all about the promo earlier on in the night. It was absolutely spectacular, and it achieved what AEW's been doing well these past 2 weeks. It was one of those things that made me want to tune in next week to see what happens. And what we want to see happen next week is Darby Allin kicking Jericho's ass. But he's not going to win, is he? But you never know anything can happen in the All Elite Wrestling Federation. Number 9 this week, and the new Cruiserweight champion, the new NXT Cruiserweight champion, I think? The new Cruiserweight, the new top flippy lad in WWE, Lio Rush. This was a great clash of styles and a very entertaining opening match on NXT. Basically, you had Gulak trying to grind down his opponent, trying to, really grind him into the canvas, use mat work, chain wrestling, that sort of thing. And then Lio Rush just being one of the flippiest men in world wrestling. But the point, I guess, of this match is to remind us all that Lio Rush can be excellent when he's given the chance to be. It was such a redemption story for Lio Rush after he just disappeared from Monday Night Raw amid rumours of backstage heat. And quite honestly, I'm a bit surprised that Lio Rush won. I would have predicted probably that Gulak would retain looking at this match, but it was a nice way to fire up the crowd at the start of this week's NXT, and it was a good match and a good performance from both men, but a great result especially for Lio Rush. He's suddenly relevant again after months and months of being totally irrelevant. So what a result for him. What a weird roller coaster of a year it's been for Lio Rush. Also a nice touch after the match as well. Nice piece of storytelling, nice little touch of I guess, respect between the two, where William Regal came out to put the Cruiserweight title around Lio Rush's waist, but Drew Gulak waved Regal off and insisted upon doing it himself, which was really nice to see, and hopefully losing the title doesn't mean that Gulak loses any relevance. I really enjoy him. He's probably, you know what, he's probably up there. He's probably one of my favourite guys in WWE right now, and I'd just like to see him move on into something even better than the Cruiserweight Championship, because he truly deserves it. Number 8, from the winner of the opening match of this week's NXT to the loser of the main event, it's time to award 3 big points to Kushida. This was a really valiant effort from Kushida in the main event. Obviously, he's got all the experience necessary to make a match a compelling one, which this was down the stretch, even if the result was a little bit predictable, because he was, of course, going up against the monstrous Volta. Kushida in this match really demonstrated, I think, why, in my opinion at least, he's one of the best all-rounders in wrestling today. He can obviously do submissions really well. That may be the best facet of his game. He can fly when he wants to. He can strike when he wants to as well. He's really great when it comes to nearly every aspect of professional wrestling, all wrapped up in one single wrestler. It's quite rare to see, but it's absolutely brilliant as well. But he was never going to win this match, was he? Even though it was non-title, I couldn't see Kushida getting a win over Volta, who has just been such a dominant United Kingdom champion so far. But that doesn't mean that Kushida comes out of this match looking weak, you know. I think that maybe he'll be now more popular in the eyes of people less familiar with him. Yes, those of us who know Kushida from maybe his previous days in New Japan are aware that he can take things to an even higher level than he demonstrated on NXT this week. But for the more casual fan, or for the newer fan, I think this was a nice showcase of what Kushida can do, even though he couldn't quite get the job done at the end of the day. Number 7, let's cross back over the divide, back to AEW, and talk about a newcomer to this list, but someone who I can see revisiting it quite a few times in the future. It's Mark Quinn. Mark Quinn is, of course, one half of the Private Party, which means that I can't think about much to talk about, because I think you can probably guess who the next person on this list is, given that it's a tag team who had a wonderful, massive victory this week on AEW Dynamite. What I will say about Mark Quinn is that he did pick up the victorious pinfall over the Young Bucks in the first round of this tag team tournament to determine the first ever set of champions, and it was a unique one as well. I thought it was a very striking finish to the match, with the Bucks setting him up for the Meltzer driver and him rolling forwards into a pinning predicament and holding Matt Jackson's shoulders down for the massive 3 count, and then obviously both of the lads just took off into the crowd celebrating for ages, because they had to celebrate through the commercial break, and it was a celebration richly deserved. They have impressed a lot. It was a bold booking decision from AEW to give the hot newcomers the win over the far more popular and experienced Young Bucks, but I think it's one that could pay off in the long run. The Bucks don't need this tag title tournament win, whereas the Private Party could really use this next few this next few series of matches. These next few matches, come on Jack, they could use the next few matches in the tournament to really elevate their standing, provided of course that they don't go out at the next hurdle. Which means of course that number 6, as you might have already guessed, is Isaiah Cassidy, the tag partner of Mark Quinn, and together they are the Private Party, weighing in at like 4 litres of cranberry vodka or whatever they say in the ring introduction. Now, after their first couple of matches on AEW, a lot of people, most specifically Jim Cornette, or he was the most high-profile person to say it, were suggesting that Mark Quinn could be the breakout superstar of the Private Party, which I thought was quite an unfair thing to say for Cassidy, given the fact that they'd only had a few matches in the wider public eye, and you're already earmarking one of them as the Michaels and one as the Jannetty. But I did sort of agree. I thought Mark Quinn was a bit flashier. He obviously looked more distinctive. And yeah, after this match, I think there's less of a gap between the two lads than a lot of people have been suggesting. I thought Isaiah Cassidy here was actually the more impressive man in this match. Both guys were obviously great, but I think Cassidy had the more showcase moments. Yes, Mark Quinn did the 4 dives in a row and everything, but Cassidy was getting the fundamentals right. You know, he took that massive powerbomb on the apron off Matt Jackson, and then later on when he was trying to make his big fiery comeback, he was selling the back time and time again. Really good stuff, really solid good stuff that really adds to the depth and the logic of a good wrestling match. Realistically, all 4 men did absolutely great, but it was a shock loss for the Young Bucks, which is why they only get an honourable mention this week, but both members of the Private Party absolutely deserve their spots on the top 10, and long may it continue, because they are a fresh and exciting tag team to watch. Number 5 this week, we've already mentioned him, it's the reigning and defending WWE United Kingdom champion, Volta. Bit of a strange week for Volta, because he of course was originally booked for the WXW tournament that Matthew went to, but then was one of several people who were unable to show up for a variety of reasons. Volta's reason, as has become apparent, is that he was booked in a match on NXT that turned out to be really bloody good. which was nice to see. As I mentioned earlier, Kushida gave a really good account of himself here, but the guy who benefited most from this match was, of course, Walter. A non-title win, but sometimes non-title wins can be used to galvanize a title reign, and I think that's what's happening here, as if Walter's title reign needs to be galvanized even further. So dominant has he been so far as a big badass champion. And the interesting thing about Walter is that even though he only really rose to global prominence in the wrestling world this year, and maybe a bit of last year as well, he still feels quite fresh. It is just so unusual and consistently shocking to see a man of his size do some of the things that he can do, such as the massive shotgun dropkick towards the end of this match. He's such a great wrestler, whether he's, being innovative by doing things that giants don't normally do, or whether he's especially, I think, compelling when he's taking it old school, like we saw in that match with Pete Dunne, and just being a massive, difficult to beat, just a bastard. Just a massive bastard. I couldn't think I was going to end that sentence, but it seems the most appropriate way. Number 4 this week, one of few wrestlers, I think, to emerge from Hell in a Cell relatively unscathed, and she is also still the Raw Women's Champion. It's Becky Lynch. Becky put on easily the best match of Hell in a Cell this year because it was the only really good match of the show. The tag match with Bryan and Rowan and Harper and Roman was good, but at the same time, I preferred the Hell in a Cell match that opened the show between Becky and Sasha. I thought it was wonderful, it was innovative, and maybe most importantly of all, it was intense. They really brought the intensity, which is always a little bit difficult to achieve now in this era where, there's no blading and stuff, but they managed to do so really well, and they really did, I think, managed to honour the stipulation, which a lot of Hell in a Cell matches these days fail to do, sadly. Then again, it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise because even though she might not be your favourite wrestler, when intensity is concerned, it's really hard to deny that Becky Lynch always brings it and always helps to bring a big match feel to her title matches, and that's exactly what we saw here. It was really, really good. The finish was cool as well with the massive, I guess avalanche exploder from the top rope onto the pile of chairs, into the disarmer, and I was surprised about the result, to be honest. I thought Sasha Banks was going to win, but it turns out that it was Becky who won, and she is still the Raw Women's Champion. Maybe a sensible decision given the new TV deals and everything, and she's a big star, but at the same time, yeah, I think the storyline would have been more compelling had Becky lost, but it's not too big a deal when the match is that good. Number 3 this week, and somebody who we've not seen on the list that much given her extensive absences from wrestling this year, but it is someone who I feel deserves it after a wonderful performance at Hell in a Cell. For my money, the best single performance of any wrestler on Sunday night, and it is, of course, Sasha Banks. That's right, I've decided to put Sasha in one slot ahead of Becky, even though she lost the match, just because I was so impressed with her performance. The bumping was there, the selling was there, when she was on offense, that was really compelling as well. The sadism of being like a dastardly heel was there. It was just really, really good stuff from Sasha, and once again she reminded us that she might be the best pure worker in WWE today in the women's division, but one of the best ones I think in either division. She really goes full throttle every single match, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it does make for compelling action. I don't really understand what the point was of the whole thing after the match where Sasha was on the ramp kind of welling up with tears. I don't know if that achieved anything. I don't know whether she'll be given another shot at the title later on. Maybe she'll be moved to SmackDown in the draft. Who really knows what's going to happen? But I'm at least glad that she managed to restore faith in herself as a top level, high caliber performer and one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. She's personally one of my favorites. I think she's great, and I'm really glad she got to show what she could do once again last Sunday. It's just a shame she didn't win. I know it sounds ridiculous from me because I'm a big Becky Lynch fan, but I really did want and think that Sasha was going to win that match, and it is a shame that she didn't. Number 2, let's go over to Dragon Gate, because Dragon Gate have been having a pretty solid 2019 actually. They put on arguably the best show of the year so far in Kobe a few months ago, and now as well they've put on another pretty stellar big show in Gate of Victory. I always get confused. I mean, their title's called the Open the Dream Gate title, for God's sake. Gate of Victory, I think, was the name of the show. There were several good matches in this show. I mentioned one in the honorable mentions between Yoshino and Skywalker. That was really good. It was a 5-minute sprint, but it was about as good as a 5-minute sprint can be. But also the best match of the night, I think, and the best match of the week in the world of wrestling that I've seen at least, was the main event between Mochizuki and Benkei. Therefore, number 2 this week is Mochizuki. He's kind of the old man of the Dragon Gate main event scene, but just because he's physically slower doesn't mean that he's any less compelling to watch in the ring. In fact, the story of this match was a really cool one as well, because you've got Mochizuki, who was the champion last year, taking on Benkei, who was his challenger last year, and Mochizuki beat him and sent him away, and now Benkei's in the other position. He's now the champion, taking on this older veteran who kind of kind of slowed his roll last year, so maybe there's a bit of venom in this match. Maybe he's trying to get his own back slightly on the older man. But it was Mochizuki who proved to be pretty vicious in this match, actually. They both hit each other with some stiff shots, but Mochizuki really took things to a new level when he was hit with Benkei's big powerbomb finisher, but to avoid the pinfall, just clocked him in the jaw. She's like, well, you're not pinning me right now, son. Get off me right now. It was awesome. It was innovative and unique, and it really did pop the crowd, and everyone kind of was like, oh my god, what level is this going to? And my number one and this week's Wrestler of the Week, and still the Open the Dream Gate champion over in Dragon Gate, is Benkei. And we're going to talk about what level that match went to. It finished with him just headbutting Mochizuki. Controversial, of course, given Shibata's retirement and everything, but man, it was effective in a really brutal and simple way. This match was obviously excellent, and on a wider level, Benkei is kind of becoming one of the most important figures in Japanese wrestling, certainly outside of New Japan at least, because there's various aces going on at the moment in various promotions. You know, you've got Okada in New Japan, you've got Miyahara in All Japan, and in Dragon Gate, you've kind of got Benkei. They're trying to establish him, I guess, as the new ace. And there's a lot of pressure on Benkei because whoever beat Pac for the Open the Dream Gate title was going to have big shoes to fill, given how excellent Pac's reign was, and I guess how clear it was that the position they were trying to fill was of a huge, big babyface, the next ace of the promotion. And when Benkei beat him, everyone was like, okay, let's see what he can do now. And it looks as though from this match, he can do really, really well indeed. I'm really excited to see what Benkei can do next. I think he's pretty young. I think he's only in like his mid to late 20s. And I'm really, really impressed with him. He hasn't featured on this list too much, but his title reign is still relatively young. It's not as long as the epic reigns that Dragon Gate often like to throw out. So we'll see where this goes, and we'll see if he can truly establish himself as the next big ace in Japanese wrestling. Now, without any further ado, let's take a look at the league table. Volta has leapt up to 4th place level with Kazuchika Okada after that great match with Kushida in the main event of this week's NXT. And really, until we get right towards the bottom, there hasn't been much change in the top 25. And I don't really know how to kill time. Has anyone seen the new Joker movie? Heard it was good. Some people thought it was better than others. Right, we're getting there now. Becky Lynch has moved level with Daniel Bryan after that great match against Sasha Banks at Hell in a Cell. See you next week. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.